What? All right. So explain what the bad tendency and preferred position doctrine states. How does Gitlow versus New York fall under these two doctrines we talked about on Friday? Yep. So please turn in your assignment. I'm going to grade that on Canvas probably tonight. Maybe at the end of class I'll have some time. Just told you to turn it in. All right, so what do we have here? What do we got? Jeffrey, what do you have for your response to this bell ringer?
I have that the Gilwood and York doctrines, they allow the 14th Amendment to be held to the constitutional information, and it will be extended to the First Amendment for providing previous protections to freedom of speech and freedom to the press that are not previously applied by the United States government.
All right, good job. So 14th Amendment, what is it?
14th Amendment is
Oh, okay. Due process, right? Yeah, okay, good, good. So with that being said, this is creating a stance that the states cannot restrict freedom of speech. But before this, with Get Low versus New York, what was happening with this court case? What was this establishing? What was this talking about? What was Get Low doing here? You guys remember? We talked about it on Friday.
Yeah, I did.
I know we talked about it on Friday.
Hey, Kristen.
Hey, where's milk? Get Low versus New York. What do we have here? Back.
Your money. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
You are. Swing the door open.
My fault.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
He was disturbing the left-wing manifesto.
Okay, yeah, good job. So he's writing articles, really this left-wing manifesto, and the time of Red Scare right after World War One, and this was maybe inciting violence, trying to push people to maybe overthrow the government. So they applied it that, you know what, maybe we should limit his freedom of speech and expression just because he's literally talking about taking down the United States government. And there's an argument about it. It's like, maybe his article really wasn't trying to do that. But considering the circumstances with the Red Scare, with communist revolution occurring in Russia, and maybe traveling over the United States, well, this is a huge fear, especially to the basic fundamentals of the United States, what the foundation of the United States government was established for. And if there's a revolution occurs in the United States, well, who knows what could happen. And we talked about this with Schenck versus the United States, Debs versus the United States, right? And how with these two court cases, especially with restricting the freedom of speech and with communism, we talked about with Debs, how many popular votes did he receive in jail? How many did he receive? You guys remember? Madden, do you say it? 1 million. Yeah, 1 million. That's a lot, right? That's a lot. So again, sparking fear, paranoia amongst the people in the US. So again, with these positions, with these doctrines, you know what? Maybe there should be a limitation on freedom of speech. Okay, with the bad tendency doctrine, we talked about this along with the clear and present danger rule. Well, if you're trying to incite violence, if you're trying to create some sort of paranoia or fear or danger, well, maybe that speech can be limited. Can't say bomb on an airplane, right, Brock? Yeah. Just like the meet the parents, right, Jeffrey? Yeah. Okay. So preferred position doctrine, again, looking back at it during the 1940s, it's like, well, maybe we should try to look back at this type of doctrine. Maybe we should look back at these acts that were created by states to limit freedom of speech and think, you know what, this is going against totally what the United States has set out to be. And that states should not try to limit freedom of speech. In many cases, if you do this, well, are we better than an authoritarian government? No, right? The United States is built off these principles and rights for the people. And if the states try to restrict these rights, well, chances are there might be a bigger rebellion coming your way, right? There might be an upheaval of a government or assembly of the people to try to take down the government. All right, good. Is there any questions on that? So again, Get Low versus New York. Make sure you guys remember it kind of goes along the lines of Schenck versus US, Debs versus US, with this bad tendency doctrine and communist revolution and a Red Scare occurring all throughout the United States. Who knows, Tanner? Maybe we'll hear about it in first period tomorrow. We'll see. Or Wednesday. I don't know yet. Okay. So today I want to talk about limitation of speech and expression in school. Before we get there, I want to talk about Tinker versus Moines. You guys remember that one? Remember that one? Okay, so where we left off with freedom of speech in school, Tinker versus Moines. What was that all about? What was Tinker versus Moines all about? Jeffrey, go ahead.
Or school students wanted to wear black armbands in protest of the Vietnam War. The school told them they couldn't. They got suspended. They came back wearing all black. They got all the way to the Supreme Court in the court case, and the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the students.
Of the students, yeah, good job. And what form of speech is that? With the black armbands or dress, attire, clothing? Is it pure speech? What is it? Tanner, what is it? Symbolic speech. Good job. And we talk about that already with Tinker versus Moines. And this creates the Tinker test. And we'll talk about the Tinker test today with some of these court cases we're going to mention with Bethel versus Frazier and Hazelwood versus Colemaire, and how these students are maybe overstepping their boundaries with expression and especially associated with the school. All right, so let's get to it today. I have no terms for you. Just to make sure you guys need to write down these Supreme Court cases that we discussed that we went over, like Gitlow versus New York, Tinker versus Moines. Talked about Schenck versus the United States, right? Talked about Gitlow versus New York. Yep. Okay. Today we're going to mention a little bit about Bethel versus Frazier, Hazelwood versus Colemaire. Okay, I think I already went over this, right, with defamatory speech and libel and slander, right? Okay, real quick, what is it? What is it? What does libel mean? What does libel mean? Sarah, what's libel mean? Yeah, there's a term. We wrote it down. Well, I don't know if you're here. You might have been on vacation. But hey, you should be all caught up. How do you catch up when you're off? Right, like and subscribe. Okay, okay.
So responsible by law, legally answerable.
Okay, all right. So is this written or spoken language? Libel. Written language or spoken? Tanner?
Libel is written.
Yeah, good job. And slander is spoken. Good job. Good. Good, good, good. I'm sure you guys were going through grocery stores or something. You see these magazines about actors and famous movie stars. Like, oh, just trying to get you to read it. Or on social media. A lot of these titles are getting you to just grab your attention, and the article states at the bottom, oh, we don't know if this is true or not. Right? Lack of evidence. Oh, really just trying to get us to buy into these sort of articles. Okay, so fighting words, this goes along the lines of, like I was saying, a clear and present danger rule, and how this is, again, provoking violence. So if you're looking to maybe cause damage or any type of danger or any type of problem or conflict amongst the people, depends what you have to say, right? That the government can restrict of what you're saying. So fighting words, right? If you're trying to incite danger or you're trying to seek any type of harmful action against someone, well, your freedom of speech can be limited. And depending on a certain court case, your view of your viewpoint and your aggression, maybe, or your personality or characteristics towards someone could sway against you in the court of law just by spoken language. So be careful what you post on social media. Be careful what you say about other people, maybe, right? Social media activity, right, man? Yeah, Coach Burchard, I don't know if you would have liked what you had to say about it. No, I'm just joking. You did a good job. I liked it. Okay, so Bethel versus Frazier, 1986. So with Bethel versus Frazier, this was a Supreme Court case. This was actually an assembly in the school, and this got all the way to Supreme Court just because a student was trying to push for his friend to be class president. You guys vote on class officers already? Yeah? Oh, okay. Well, at this certain school, I guess they're used to do like an election and campaign for that said candidate, which was pretty neat, I guess. I think that'd be pretty cool to do. But we all know with certain campaigns, it comes to a point where you have to target someone else, right? In this case, Frazier, he was really putting to the point where he was going to try to push for his friend to become class president. And within his speech, he had it written a couple times to try to incite, I guess you say, the students to vote for his friend. And within his within his speech, he actually referred to a lot of sexual positions, I guess you could say, verbiage within his speech. And as he was getting it reviewed by some teachers and even administrators, they tried to advise him against stating these such words and this type of language. But do you think that stopped him? No, it didn't. So he went up in front of the assembly full of, I believe it was like 500-600 students, and he spoke his mind and he expressed his friend, the candidate for class president, usually using these sexual words and phrases. And he was expelled for 3 days, and he tried to fight it. He said, "Oh, this isn't right. I should be allowed to express myself and detail what I'm saying, right? This is going against my freedom of speech. Just because I'm walking into school doesn't mean you can take away my freedom of speech." And what court case do you think he kicked back to in reference of, hey, my rights aren't taken away when I walk through the school doors here? We just talked about it, symbolic speech. The Tinker test, right? Tinker versus Des Moines. Okay, there we go. Oh, you had me worried there. I'm worried. Yeah, so he's referring back to the Tinker test. It's like, well, we weren't, you can't just take away our freedom of speech when we're walking through the door here. But it all came down to the Supreme Court said, well, if this is causing an issue with the school day, if this is causing an interruption with the school manner, I guess you'd say, with the learning of the school, the education, because what do you think the kids did when they were returned back to class? You think they stopped talking about the assembly? No, that's all they talked about. It was to a point where many of the educators, many of the teachers couldn't give their lesson because they're still giggling, there's still smirks, there's still laughs about his presentation, about his assembly, okay, and what he was campaigning for with his friend, the class president, and some of the terms he used. It's like, oh, maybe you shouldn't have done that. So the Supreme Court actually sided with the school district on this one. Like, oh, well, if this was an interruption to the school day and the workings of the school with education, then this can be limited. This can be restricted. What do you say, Jeffrey?
Did his friend get elected?
I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe look into it. And I'm sure many of you will probably look into what he had to say. So just be careful of what you're looking into, okay? Some of it may be uncomfortable. Jeffrey, don't do it. Okay, all right. So Hazelwood versus Colemaire, another court case revolving around education and freedom of speech. This was actually associated with the school newspaper, though. Okay, and the school was really, I guess you say, involved with the school newspaper. They thought, oh, this is a good idea. This will help students understand journalism and writing articles and preparing their stories and their research to the rest of the school. And obviously, those newspapers will get out to families and out to the community. So it's important that the school is shown in a good light, right? And it's important that the school regulates what is said because it's an association with the school. So who purchases many of the materials? The school, right? And who supplies the students with the ability to write these stories? The school does. So with the school's name on it, they were trying to obviously have some sort of limitations to what was written. And Colemaire, an editor of the newspaper, she was writing about many of the stories with divorces and pregnancies within the school. So teen pregnancies with divorces amongst family members, well, of students and their parents. So they were writing about it. They didn't actually give the names, so they actually disclosed the names, but they all kind of knew and understood who the stories were written about. So with these stories being presented in the school newspaper, administrator school read through it and is like, oh, this can't be allowed. We can't be talking about these sort of sensitive topics in our school newspaper. If this gets out, we're obviously associated with it. We're publicizing this to the rest of the community and the people in the school and the students. And this might cause some issues of emotional stress to some of the students that maybe are reading it and know that the story is about them. So this got kicked back all the way to 1988. This occurred in 1983. The Supreme Court finally picked it up. And again, this argument on freedom of expression, freedom of the press, really, and freedom of speech. And the Supreme Court actually ruled in favor of the school again, saying, well, if it's associated with the school, if the school is funding this type of newspaper, then they can limit what is stated, what is published in the newspaper. Okay. And this goes along the lines even on TNN, right, Jeffrey? You just can't get up and say whatever you want on TNN, can you? Maybe some of those jokes they better wash out with. Those jokes are funny. Did you come up with that? I don't remember him doing that in years past.
It was my
Okay. Well, you have a script, right? It has to be approved by Mr. Rupp or Miss Kastner, right? Yeah. And anything else that is said. And if you say anything else, well, or say anything bad, they'll just cut you from it. I'll just say, you know what, we're gonna start fresh. Jeffrey, get out of the seat. You're not talking. You're not broadcaster, or you're not reporting for today. So anyway, like I was mentioning, because the school's associated with that type of language and that freedom of expression, I guess you'd say, with the newspapers, they can limit what is stated and what is expressed. All right, is there any questions on those two court cases? We good? Okay. So again, yeah, your freedom of speech is protected, but at the same time, if it has an association with the school, well, you gotta watch what you say, right? It could be limited by the school of what you could be stating, what you could be saying. And on social media, obviously, gotta watch what you post there. All right, that's what I got for today. I have an assignment for you now on Bethel versus Frazier. I'd like you guys to work on. So it's very similar to what the court case was for Get Low versus New York. That same setup. Let me get to it here. Who?
The speech did work. His friend did get elected.
He did. He got
Apparently,
elected.
His friend's name was Jeff.
His name, yeah, his name was Jeff.
Ironic.
Ironic is right. All right, just post it like you guys get working on it now. So here's the assignment for today. Like I mentioned, it's very similar to what we saw with Get Low versus New York, that type of assignment. You read through the Supreme Court case, gives you a little bit more information on it, and the questions are attached below, right there. All right. We will discuss and go over this one tomorrow. I have that one ready to go for discussion. All right, there we go. And meeting.